Okay, super. So, yeah, thanks for joining. We're a couple of minutes late getting going, so good timing for those of you that have just joined. Um, so, I think this is number 5, isn't it? Levent, disengaged but still showing up, and what it really costs when people are going through the motions and not really engaged. So, let's crack on, mate. Have our normal 20 minutes. These are some of the things that we've got to sort of guide the conversation. I mean, it seems to be a massively hidden problem, or has been historically. It's coming out more and more. Yet, despite that, we know that people attend meetings. We see them there, yawning, falling asleep, especially after lunch. And everybody moans about minimum outputs and no motivation. People aren't being proactive. So we see the signs of this issue of disengagement, but it's been so, I don't know, hiding in plain sight almost, hasn't it, that we haven't really done anything about it. So, I mean, when we do start to unpack it, this it leads to the KPIs that we do pay attention to and think we want to improve. And yet we don't seem to make the connection in our own minds between whether the people involved are in the right place in their minds, whether they're engaged, whether they're actually coming to work and enjoying what they do. And the fact that we've got low productivity, quite often stagnant productivity, no matter what we try and do from a change perspective. And that can lead into low innovation. People checking out earlier and raising the risk of high turnover and attrition rates, I think, has become, a massive problem since COVID. I hear HR directors talking about it all the time, and skill shortages and trying to recruit the right people. So retaining talent and knowledge in the business is becoming a strategic imperative, really. Um, and once you start getting people thinking like that, I mean, we've called it culture of mediocrity there. I think it's a great phrase, but it spreads quickly. And, we've got this report from Gallup, mate, haven't we? That, or just let other people in, that, says that the global economy is being cost 8.9 trillion. I mean, Levin, we've seen the stats around that. Do you want to unpack that a bit more for anyone listening?
Yes, sure. We spent more than 30 years of our lives as professional managers in manufacturing industry, and this is the biggest problem I have observed, according to my experience. It is disengagement. Unfortunately, probably many managers are not aware of this problem because when we talk about disengagement, people tend to think about their satisfaction or opinion surveys where they get always or most of the time more than 70%, 75% or 80% satisfaction rates, which is from our perspective is very, very misleading. And there is a real study behind it made by Gallup. And according to that study, 79% of employees are disengaged at work. That means they are not connected to each other. They are not connected to the managers and the goals of the company, which causes a big loss from the potential of the company. And Gallup calculated it to be 8.9 trillion worldwide, which is a huge loss.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? And we those statistics, I mean, what's interesting for me is that it changes by culture. Country level culture, you see a difference in Italy and France and England than you do see in other countries around the world. So, some of that statistic, the average 79% disengagement peaks at sort of 90 plus percent, doesn't it? 91%, 94% in these countries.
Even 96% in
Yeah.
in Italy and France, like depending on the places. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, obviously, that's going to reflect politics and different bits and pieces and sort of attitudes at a national level, I guess. But it's a cultural thing, and we talk about culture in business all the time. So, this issue of disengagement, which we've just seen or seen here, the hits, productivity, innovation, turnover, key business issues that make a massive difference to profit and performance and sustainability and longevity of the business. It all links to the company culture as much as the country culture, and this is why getting that cultural piece right is and understanding. And again, I'm probably jumping way too far ahead here, but you know, in the stuff we write and the stuff we talk about, it's become so obvious through this neuroscience lens that when we talk about with words like culture, we're really talking about the chemical mix in people's brains, how we respond to each other. And there's this massive chemical component that's linked to our feelings, right? And the feelings sit behind engagement or disengagement. So it's about making this connection that seems to have been missing in the market for decades, all of my career at least, and I know yours as well, mate, to getting the people bit right, hitting the bottom line, creating good culture. These are all linked. They're a system, right? And we tend to think of them separately.
Yeah. As you said, many companies are aware that culture is very important in overall performance, and they conduct some cultural analysis. If you look at those analyses, and according to my experience, the key traits, cultural traits for high performance are collaboration and accountability, none of which is possible without engagement, as you see.
Mm.
If people believe in what they are doing, this is the only chance to get them engaged at work.
Yeah, exactly. And that collaboration bit, I mean, when we use, again, it's words. There's so much more meaning to each word we use. Collaboration means effective problem solving, teamwork, innovation, moving things forward faster. And that's what we see with our clients, isn't it? You get this people bit right, and people are in a great space where their brains can work well. And we see whole change program timelines reduce because you're getting the results quicker. And that's, again, massive impact on cost, which is, primary concern for nearly every business out there. I know we've got quite a few slides here. Let's make sure we're getting through them because it's 7 minutes past already. Um, so what's this one saying? Why goals aren't enough? I mean, I've just written a piece on learning and this stuff that's kind of touches on this. It's coming out on Friday. But I mean, I love the top one in red there. Clear goals are not equal to motivation. And yet we seem to think that setting a goal gives people all they need to be able to go towards something psychologically and emotionally, and it doesn't, right?
Yeah, there is a common belief, the common sense about this in business life. According to it, if we set clear goals that everybody can understand, and if they are logical, everybody should understand and believe in it, and they will get motivated by it. But the brain doesn't work like this. I mean, you can have a perfect communication with all your employees, and you can um, formulate your strategy in a very understandable way. But if they are not connected to that purpose, if it doesn't mean anything for them, and if they don't feel emotionally confident with that direction or goal, they will never do their best to achieve those goals. So that means even though our communication style may be perfect, we should take emotions into account. What kind of emotions are we creating in other brains? This is the key to success.
Absolutely. And again, it's that connection. If we set goals and for other people, we're imposing control in various ways because of the way the brain looks at the world. And actually, what we need is I mean, it goes into self-determination theory and all that kind of stuff. You need to determine your own outcomes as good because your brain needs to process the world and say, where I'm going is good for me. And you've got to do that. You can't have somebody else do that for you. When you make progress towards those goals that you see as good and valid, then you do get that dopaminergic response and you get that reward feeling and you are motivated. But, the whole of business tries to set goals for other people rather than getting them included and letting them have a part in setting the goals and understanding why they're going towards something, like you said, connecting to purpose. So, yeah, we get it wrong so easily.
It's interesting. If we talk about motivation simply, it's about something that people want to do, right? If people don't want to do, they will not do it anyway, even if they understand it very clearly. Um, so wanting something is not about logic, not about being rational thinker or whatever. It's about emotions.
Yeah,
So at every project, if you want to be successful, we should check if it makes emotional sense for people involved and
yeah,
if they
definitely.
want to do it.
And that requires, I mean, what we would call BTFA language. Is we always ask people, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? Actually, it's much better when we ask, what do you believe the good looks like here? How do you feel about that? And that's when we start to change the language and better questions get better answers and better results. So it's about changing the language from my point of view, and that's I think what we see with people using BTFA, which is why it really comes to life. Talking of BTFA, look, there it is. Good timing. I didn't know what was coming on the next slide, to be honest. But I think we just spoken to that actually. Engagement starts at the belief level because you can't, if you've got a wiring pattern, which is what we call beliefs, and obviously that fires, which we call thinking. The integrated sort of systematic part of that process is the release of chemicals, which we call feelings. So, when we talk about engagement as an emotional state, and we say there it starts at the belief level, it has to because it's a component part of a wiring and firing pattern that is our brain. So behaviors are only an output of that, right? It's just that once you see it through this neuroscience lens, it's a very obvious statement. And as we covered at the beginning, for those that joined a bit later, it's just something that's disconnected in the market. We just haven't made this connection between brain and function of people. So, case in point, again, I mean, this is a great example of some of the comments that we get along the way. We always try and connect with the language our customers use, and a lot of the time that sounds like they show up, but there's no energy there, and that's red flag stuff. It's just straight away, oh, I bet I know what's going on here. But once we do get that shift, we do get that connection to emotions, and people are speaking this different language with the neuroscience, the science to back it up. We hear the comments like the one at the bottom. We clarify purpose, and as soon as people knew why they were doing something, because we took the time to help their brain map it and make sense of it, they reconnected and took ownership. I mean, and that's common, mate. We get that a lot, don't we? At the end of every BTFA session, pretty much from everybody that goes through it.
Exactly. We don't need to motivate anybody because people are already motivated to be successful and out of that success to feel valuable. So we just need to identify with them and help them
Yeah.
achieve those goals.
It's a good observation. We think about motivating people, which is ridiculous because what we see as behavior on the outside that we call being motivated is an intrinsic thing that happens because of the way the brain and the body is moving chemicals around. So yeah, to think we can do something externally other than create the best conditions in which brains can perform at their best, so they feel safe, they feel it's okay to go towards something new without fear. That's to think that we can then do these discrete activities and that's going to motivate anybody, despite every other signal from the environment and the rest of their lives in the world saying they're at risk, of not hitting the KPIs, not having a secure job, not being able to pay the bills. This is what affects the way brains are surviving the world and how they map the world. And yeah, I think we just bark up the wrong tree so often. So I've done a lot of that talking there, mate. Over to you. Let you take us through this slide. What can we say about this one?
Yes, energy is important. It is the manifestation of having motivation. If people are motivated, they show energy. Sometimes you see energy in terms of conflict. Sometimes people resist change or they they push brakes instead of accelerating, right? And even that kind of energy, I think, worth exploring because they are not how to say happy with something. They want to change something. That means they want something to happen. If we listen to them, if we include them, if we align our beliefs together with them, we can just use their energy for company goals as well if they identify with the company goals. So energy is really, really important. And if people want to do something really, they show up energy. So if there's no energy, we can quickly judge that people are not interested and probably they are in defense rather than being in collaboration or
Yeah.
in team.
I always remember the first time you said that in one of our cohorts a couple of years ago. Negative energy is energy. Yeah, and I've seen it, a number of times. I always talk about it as the pendulum effect. And people always moan about, oh, this guy's the guy that's always resisting change and is always complaining. And quite often I've seen that person, whoever it might be in a business, they're negative. So the pendulum effect is they're swung all the way over this way to the negative side. But it's usually because they're intelligent enough to be frustrated to know that things can be better. And so it's how we interpret that behavior. And when you realize it's that incapacity to make a difference that they're passionate about, when you take the blockers and the barriers out of the way and you allow them to have some kind of agency, that's when you get to a point where that pendulum swings. And I've seen those negative people become the most, I don't know, the strongest advocates for change once their frustrations are removed. So it's important not to judge the book by the cover, right? As the old saying goes.
Exactly.
Okay, so what do we do, guys? Anyone that's on the call, thanks for attending. We're teaching people, leaders around the world, about neuroscience, or about leadership and what works and what doesn't work, with the neuroscience to back it up. So we're moving past speculation and saying, this is what the brain does, this is how it works. We have inbound sensory stimulus. The brain processes it as a prediction machine to keep us safe. Glucose energy, all that kind of stuff is involved, and that we have an output which affects it, not infects. It's not a disease. It affects the brains around us. Okay, so I mean, to support that, we've got this online training course, BTFA, and we're also running workshops for engagement alignment, and supporting managers to apply this new language, this BTFA neuroscience based language, on a daily basis. And I have to say, it sounds a bit self-serving, but we're getting fantastic results. And I think, Levent, you and I have led change programs. You inside Toyota for 16 years, man, truck and bus. Me across different sectors across 11 countries in the EU, for the last 35 years. And my experience goes from space, defence, automotive, and contract manufacture, all sorts. And I'd say, without trying to overstate the fact, we're getting better results doing this than we have in all those years we were teaching lean and trying to lead leaders in different ways, right?
Exactly, because the techniques, tools, and strategies we have been using were just excluding people, how they feel, how they are connected to the purpose, etc., which is an emotional art, if you like. And we can now decode this art using neuroscience, and we can develop practical tools for managers to how to say, to identify with their employees, to engage with them, and to improve collaboration, teamwork, and accountability.
Yeah, exactly. I was doing a talk for a rail operator, earlier this week, and I always say, quite often in my talks, that we have relationships. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Hannah, actually, outside the school earlier when I took my little boy to school, and said that, going back to that, fact that HR originally meant human relations, not human resources. Um, and Hannah said, or human remains, which I thought quite often is it's quite funny. Or Hellraiser, I think, was the other term she used under the banner of HR. But it's about relationship. And the thing is, we have a relationship with ourselves, we have a relationship with other people, we have a relationship with the artifacts in the world, the things around us, because our brains survive in all of those things. And when I say the relationship with ourselves, it's that inner voice, it's the way we talk to ourselves, it's the language, it's the way we frame the world, which triggers the way we react from an attitudinal point of view, positively or negatively. So, it really is about, developing self-acceptance, self-awareness, and that is massively advanced when we can start understanding ourselves as brain function.
So before passing to the next slide, we can summarize this previous page. Like this, I suppose. We provide simple and scientific tools that manager can use to improve their culture by increasing engagement. That's it.
I'm going to write that down. That sounds like a strap line we should use. Thanks, mate. Great summary. So, and again, Q&A, some of the questions we've had for this session, posted to us. We've only got a couple of minutes, so I just want to focus on probably the last one. What if senior leaders are disengaged too? Levent, what do we say about this?
I think this is the most important one. I have the same idea. There is a trap in this question. Most of the people think that culture comes from top down. So it's all senior leadership team's responsibility if they inject negative culture. What can we do? Kind of thinking. But whatever our, let me start like this. Everybody has a superior. Even CEOs in companies have superiors, right? To report to. So if you look at top only, there is no only one top which can be who can be responsible. So if you want to blame others, you can always blame your superiors. On the other hand, when you stop and think about it, when you take responsibility, that's where accountability starts. You can always change things. One of our friends who is already in this call asked a similar question. He tries to implement BTFA in the company, but nobody else around him were implementing BTFA. But that's not the problem. You can start change by yourself. As soon as you start changing your relationships with others, the culture at micro level starts to change around you. And one day you will be manager, you will be a senior leader in the company where you can have much bigger effect on bigger audiences.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. I'm going to be naughty and I'm going to make us run over by a couple of minutes because we're dead on time right now, but I'm going to extend it because I just noticed that we got a comment from Michael who's on the call. And I know Michael, we've spoken before, so thanks for this. It says, thank you for emphasizing emotions and their biochemical foundations. Here is something that puzzles me. As ethical leaders, we are told to lead with logic, not emotions. Why things matter, how X drives Y. And the ancient Greeks also taught us logic must go first and emotions and charisma go second, which more modern philosophers challenged, of course. So, like Hume. And as a leader, I may even lose trust when I am showing too many emotions myself. Now that emotions are so important, and I guess you're saying we can see that emotions are important because we understand the neuroscience, how do I then best lead? Just being aware of my own and other people's emotions, is that good enough? Or actively driving for certain emotional responses? What's first thoughts to that, Levent? Then I'll chip in afterwards.
Yeah, these are ambiguous words. I mean, logic, emotion, etc. From neuroscience perspective, we know that all decisions can only be done with emotional content. I mean, without emotions, we cannot think. Without thoughts, we cannot feel anything. So they go together, they exist together. Any rational decision should include a balanced proportion, balanced amount of balanced inclusion of emotions as well. So every decision has an emotional context. The problem is whether we take those emotions into account with our conscious thinking or not, with our logic or not. This is what we recommend our leaders to do. Metacognition, to stop and think about what they are thinking, whether emotions they use while achieving that decision are rational or not. Even emotions can be rational. So the best decisions are made after such evaluation of thoughts and emotions together.
Brilliant, thanks, mate. Yeah, what popped into my head when I read Michael's question was that we just try and keep this stuff simple because we can use great big long Latin words about brain areas and functions and just confuse everything. So we've tried to take all of that and filter it all down to the most simplistic form. Put my teeth in, and what we often say through BTFA, the experience we give people through the course is that you're gonna you just know if you feel good or bad, right? So that's the key thing to focus on because you'll know, and again psychologically it gets complicated, but you'll trigger a towards or an away from response. Away from we call resistance to change, and that means the person has had something in the environment has triggered them to become defensive, and towards means you've engaged, you've got curiosity, and you've triggered something that's going to get people to go further and investigate. So you really, as a leader, you don't really have to make it any more complicated than that. Yes, it helps, and I'd say it's essential to understand the mechanisms that you're trying to work with in brains. But when you boil it all down to the simple stuff, it's do people feel okay, and are they going towards what it is they've been able to determine? Going back to what we said earlier about goals, to be good, and if you can get that bit right, and you can get that in the majority of the people you're working with throughout teams, you're going to get better results. So.
Finally, 20 seconds maybe. I am also interested in ancient Greeks, what they have been saying. Look at Aristotle, for example. For Aristotle, there's no priority between emotions and logic. For Aristotle, to identify with people, to convince people, you need three things: ethos, pathos, logos, right? Logos is logic, and ethos, pathos are credibility, and emotions. You have to have all these three elements in your speech, in whatever you do, so that other people can understand you and identify with you. I think there is no priority of logic over emotions.
No, and it is a good point because I think like Spinoza, I mean, I think I wrote an article last week actually on Spinoza and embodied emotions, what we call interoception and those kind of things these days. But you see that the Greek idea that logic comes before emotion lasted 1500, 1600 years. Then you get to Hume, Spinoza, and different philosophers, sort of through the Enlightenment, and they challenged it. And it was a massive challenge. It was like, you can't say this, we can't say that emotions come first and then we try and rationalize them afterwards. But that's what they speculated about as they try to recognize their own behavioral responses and that in other people and try and make sense of it and codify it and put sequence to it. What we've got now in neuroscience is this phenomenal opportunity to get past all the speculation and actually demonstrate what's going on. And the reality is, BTFA is believe, think, feel, act, to keep it the simple terms, right? A wiring pattern that fires, that's got a chemical component that we call emotions that leads to our behaviors. But it doesn't only work in one direction, it goes both ways. We act and interact in the world. We have an emotional response because that's part of our defense mechanisms. There's a chemical shift to any signals that there's a thing called hierarchical temporal memory in the brain that's always scanning the world for threat and building up pictures to see if our predictions are right or not. So we get that initial emotional response, which we then think about afterwards, which we try and rationalize and make sense of. And all of that thinking, especially when we sleep, consolidates into changing the behaviors, either wiring patterns. So neuroscience lets us know that the ancient Greeks were right and the Enlightenment philosophers were right. And we've got to look at it all together because it's one great big system. And it's about trying to understand that as simply as possible, which makes everybody go, oh, now I see. And that's what we see quite a lot as well. But the neuroscience is fantastic. So I know we are well over. We know we said we're going in 20 minutes and we've done 26, which is naughty of us, or 27. It's just gone to 29. So, and we started at 2 minutes past. Everybody on the call, thank you so much for coming along. It's great to see some of you. David, I can't see you there at the moment. And Simon, great to see you guys. Michael and Badar, thanks ever so much. We look forward to doing this or similar again on another subject next week. See you all soon.